the way the systems currently look now, we say to a Black woman, you can't wear those locks to court. All of this fixing, it really robs us of joy and it robs us of rest.
In the fight for survivor justice, for racial justice, we are asked to heal from violence and oppression, to hold space for survivors, and to center those with the highest burden of violence. We're asked to embrace how other cultures have fostered beloved communities, to reject the systems and beliefs that do not serve us, and to pause to consider what's working and what isn't. As we close the 2023 Domestic Violence Awareness Month and look forward to this upcoming year, I sat down with Jacqueline Miller from the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence to talk about the importance of pausing, especially after months like DVAM, and centering in ourselves and in our missions to end violence, to advance racial equity and foster communities free from violence. This conversation is a bonus track from an Instagram Live conversation we had earlier this month. Jacqueline is sharing about her 36 years in the movement, NRCDV's national DVAM campaign, and what they're putting out to help advocates and preventionists along the way. All that and more coming up in this episode of PreventConnect.
Hello, Janae. How's it going on this Friday afternoon?
It is a Friday, and I am so happy that it's Friday. Can I say, so for folks who, on Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, we were doing this. We were originally planning this Instagram Live, and I hopped on with Jacqueline afterward to kind of chat about some tech stuff. And Jacqueline, you had an amazing outfit then, and I thought that you were dressing up for the live, and now you have an amazing outfit yet again. Is this just like what you look like?
You know what? Here's what I do. I just go in the closet and I just start grabbing things. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this. So I already did the purple, and I'm like, you got to show the orange some love too now. It is October. Pumpkin season, you know what I'm saying?
True. Wow, Jacqueline, you and I have very different. When I go into my closet and just like grab things, it's just like a white button up always. But you look incredible. I love the fall representation, and Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month is orange. So it's a little bit of a nod ahead of time too. It's funny that you mentioned that, and I promise we will talk about serious things. I'm very excited to talk about your campaign, but I think about this every October. So, like, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, I'm chilling. I have lots of orange. Sexual Assault Awareness Month, teal. I've got all the teal. Every single year, and I don't know how many, I think I've been in this field for like 6 years now, never have purple. And every year I'm like, Janae, you have to go get some purple. And then I forget. And I was ripping through my closet today, and I was like, it's just not going to happen again for me. So you're teaching me a lesson. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Hey, 36 years, I have to have the purple hat, shoes, shirt, blouse, skirt, and and some purple hair too.
I'm glad you mentioned the purple hair. Truly, that is the biggest tragedy for people who did not get to see you on live. Like, I've never seen so much purple in my life, and it was amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And you know what? Maybe we can plan something like some virtual shopping, Hey, I think that's a great idea. Let's all just meet up at a certain time at our favorite store, and let's just walk through and see what we can find.
Oh, I love that. I need that. And this work is heavy sometimes. So let's do some virtual shopping.
Yes.
Well, Jacqueline, thank you. And thank you for starting off with fashion stuff. I need that on my Friday. For folks who are just joining, I'm so stoked to have Jacqueline Miller on this Instagram Live with me. For folks who are listening to this as a podcast later, we just talked about how epic Jacqueline looks right now. And Jacqueline is the Director of Racial Equity and Social Change at the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, which, that's a huge title. So I'm very honored to be in your presence.
Oh, thank you so much. And I am absolutely honored to be here. I am so honored. We thank you for inviting NRCDB to be in this space with you to have this conversation.
Of course. I was just reflecting on that as I was preparing for this conversation, thinking about last year we did a podcast with you all and talked about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And something that I have always deeply appreciated about NRCDV is how incredibly intentional you all are about everything that you do. And, with DVAM, centering racial justice every single year, not as a fad, not as the trendy thing. I feel like you see that a lot in social justice spaces. And you all just really sticking with it. And especially this year, hanging on to that and talking about heal, hold, and center is just really powerful.
Yes. Yes. And, it certainly is. And, our partners, the key, the members of the advisory board and committee said, no, we are sticking with this. We will continue with this theme, no survivor justice without racial justice. So it's really, the commitment of our partners and the members, who keep this in front, and those that's, doing the work, find and know. The thing is, Janae, we know the necessity that we must not let up, right? We must not let up off the topic, because it's so easy to, to get new topics and to find something catchy and something really trendy and something that sounds like it has a nice ring to it. That's easy to do. But we are committed to the necessity to continue to push forth, to continue to remind our movement, our nation, that no, there cannot be any justice, survivor justice, without racial justice.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And that is the experience. It's been my experience throughout my entire career in this field, right? Like, it comes around to time to planning for October, and it's like, what's our theme this year? Well, that was our theme last year, so we can't do it again. And I never really thought, like, why do we have to switch it up all the time? Are we that desperate to be new and compete for people's attention, and what do we lose along the way? So I think that's really cool. And, it kind of leads into my first question for you. And there are a lot of differing opinions about awareness months, but I think it's a really powerful time to bring people into this movement. We're used to having these conversations, but like, my neighbor isn't, and they might only see us at the farmer's market during DVAM. So, Jacqueline, I'd love to hear what DVAM, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, made shorter, it's an acronym. We love our acronyms, but what DVAM means to you and to the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence.
Well, essentially, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, DVAM, what it means to me is that it is, pretty much what you said, neighbors and people that you wouldn't normally see. You see them during October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And what I find, and what we find at NRCDB, people truly look forward to this time of year. This is a specific time of year that it's designated to get the word out, to raise the awareness. You see all the paraphernalia with all the purple that comes out. And I'm seeing more and more, like those common things you would see, like water bottles and glasses and all kinds of things, where the message of there is no excuse for domestic violence are on those things now, like scarves and hats. And I've just seen so much. And this is the month, once again, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is the time where we come together in unity. We come out, we make it known. I've done a lot of work, started, my work in the field, in the community, and we were having those in the middle of the street, shutting the streets down, chanting, and, no survivor justice without racial justice, and hey, ho, ho, domestic violence has got to go. Anybody out there remember that? Anybody out there who's been around in the movement that long, where you remember being in the streets? I remember the pots and the pans. And so the thing about it, what I'm saying is, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. You can be as creative as you want. It's a time and an opportunity. We can go back and revisit the grassroots movement. We can look at how far we've come. We can look at how survivor safety is centered. It gives us so many opportunities. And so I'm telling you, Janae, I can go on and on and on because this is my thing. I love it so much. And this is work that doesn't feel like work. So many people love DVAM because it gives them the opportunity to do something meaningful, to contribute, to say, hey, I'm an advocate too. I'm an advocate too. You know, I also want to help and support this work and this movement for survivor safety, survivor justice.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh my gosh. You're listening to PreventConnect, the podcast bringing together voices from across the movement to end gender and power-based violence, to give you the tools to practice primary prevention in your daily life and at work. We're highlighting emerging research, promising strategies, and stories from on-the-ground prevention practitioners doing this work in new and innovative ways. Bringing you topics like foundational strategies to prevent violence, primary prevention and youth engagement, critical race theory and school climates, prevention in a digital age, and more. I'm your host, Janae Sargent, and this is PreventConnect. You know, you make such a great point. I hear that too, especially in prevention, right? Like, and there's weight to that too. We are always so focused on how can we do bigger? How can we move further out into the social ecological model? How can we be innovative? But we forget the power of having, you know, a purple scarf and a little thing in your local store about what Domestic Violence Awareness Month is, because for a lot of people, that might be the first time that they connect the dots. It might be the thing that inspires them to talk to someone else. And there's so much power in those small things.
Yeah. Yes, there is. Absolutely. And, you know, I'll add another thing too, you know, when there are events and symposiums and workshops and conferences, like all the things, you know, where non-traditional programs and services are holding space, you know, to have a conversation about domestic violence and inviting people in. I know of several that have taken place over the past just 1 week, and people who were not aware, someone walked into a domestic violence symposium space and said, I didn't even know about this. I didn't even know we had this. And so sometimes I think we tend to think our work and our message is reaching everyone, whereas we can stretch ourselves to really think about who aren't we reaching, mm-hmm. who doesn't have access, mm-hmm. you know, who isn't in touch. So that's the other thing that Domestic Violence Awareness Month does. It allows us to come out the four walls, mm-hmm. to come out, to get in the street, to go to the market, like you said, at the farmer's market, and then there'll be some purple splashes everywhere. That's what I love about it too. The purple splashes are everywhere.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And, you know, like usually we have this conversation at the very beginning of October and get people all excited. This year, I was like, people are already excited. I want to talk about it at the end of October so we can talk about how we move this stuff forward. So what has October looked like for you all at NRCDV? You mentioned a couple of symposiums you've heard of. What are some things that have been happening this month?
Well, we have been very busy. I'm sure you all are not surprised. We at NRCDV, we have been very, very busy. We have received lots of, and continue to do so, lots of requests for our trainings, for speakers to come out, to sit with and be part of podcasts. This year, we had our call for unity earlier this year. It was September the 29th, and we wanted to launch and bring in Domestic Violence Awareness Month in a unified way. And that was a very powerful event. And I tell you, if you go on our website, you're going to see a load of resources, and then trainings and webinars to come. So while these things are happening, they continue to happen. And that is another thing that is so exciting about going beyond the beginning. You know, like you said, a lot of times people start and do their things at the beginning of the month. But hey, let's not forget about the end of the month. Let's not forget that there's more opportunities where someone may say, I missed the first event. I missed the first week. I'm only now able to get in and, you know, to really engage and to listen at the end of the month. And guess what? We got something for you. We have something for everyone. We have something for everyone. Whether you're one of those persons that want to get it started and launch and get folks motivated and rallied up, or whether you're one of those folks I want to remind you that Domestic Violence Awareness Month may have ended, but hey, however, we must go beyond Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Go beyond October.
Yes, absolutely. I always think about that too. And again, that's something that I so deeply appreciate about the work that you all do, because it's not just like you're out there having a webinar, doing some events. I mean, you have some really powerful tools on your website that we'll dive into. I'm really excited to talk about your national campaign, Heal, Hold, and Center. And, you know, as we talked about, you're still really, you're consistently uplifting your overarching theme, no survivor justice without racial justice. So how has Heal, Hold, and Center evolved from no survivor justice without racial justice?
Thank you. So the Heal, Hold, and Center evolved from the No Survivors Justice Without Racial Justice as a result of the members of, that I spoke of earlier, the members of our DVAM committee coming together to discuss this year's theme. And literally we spent 2 days together really going through it, really hearing from what's happening in the field with our partners who were all together in one space. And what are you hearing, and what is your community saying? What are some of those key things or key words that you hear coming from your community members? So during our discussions, we identified that very often we focus on campaigns and how they tend to come and go very, very quickly, as you said earlier. And then we're off to something else or something new or something different or following the trends or what's popular. So this led us to identify that due to racial injustices, the layers of harms that have been caused for generations upon generations of those who are the most marginalized and the most vulnerable, we acknowledge the healing work that survivors themselves are doing. We know that healing work is being done and led by survivors themselves, and what they are doing for themselves. And the very fact that healing can happen in different and diverse ways, we wanted to hold that as well. We wanted to acknowledge that. And because we know that is true as well, we identified the importance of holding the facts and the truth that there can be no survivor justice without racial justice. And then last, we know that if we center the lived experiences of those who are the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, you know, NRCDV's theory of change says we will obtain safe communities if we center those who are the most marginalized. So that's how the theme came about, was us coming together, sitting together, hadn't been in person in a long time, for a while. And that energy that was in the room, people came ready and engaged in this conversation, and we know what our community is saying. We're listening. We know the needs of the community. And that's how this theme came about. Because healing is nothing new. Survivors have been doing that work, as well as communities doing the work the healing work. So that is what, how this evolved and came about.
You know, I keep thinking back to the conversation that I had with Yvonne last year about resilience and joy and that role, the role of resilience and joy in liberation and in social justice work, and how in the mainstream movement to end violence, the white movement to end violence, those are the things that we miss. You know, you said survivors have been healing, holding, and centering for a long time, but we don't really pause to heal, hold, and center as a movement in white supremacy culture. And so I'm curious, you know, you kind of talked me through each one of the points of that campaign. So I want to jump down a little bit. What are you hoping that the greater field, so people working in anti-violence and in social justice, what are you hoping that they take from Heal, Hold, and Center?
So we are hoping that folks take from Heal, Hold, and Center. I think you just said it beautifully, Janae. The start is to pause, to reflect. And in the pausing and in the reflecting, the next thing is to really take a look at ourselves, the importance of doing the inner work on ourselves. I know it's easy to remove ourselves from having any responsibility of looking inward at self, but that is one of the first steps that is very necessary for this theme: the pause, the turning inward, and the reflecting. And the reflecting allows us to really take a look at how well do we listen? Are we really listening? Are we really hearing? How well are we really tuned in and responding? Because the Heal, Hold, and Center, it invites and it engages us to do that. And with holding that theme, it also, what our hope is for the field is that, yes, we go beyond the words, go beyond just saying this is our theme and here's our presentation and here's what we have to say, but really sitting with it. And then as we reflect on sitting and pausing, who are we pausing with? Which means, who are we in community with? Who are we collaborating with? Is it those who are the most marginalized? Are we perpetuating patriarchy? Survivors know what they need. So are we really doing a reflective pausing? And are we inviting and engaging our organizations and our staff to also take a pause? It is necessary that we pause, because in the pause, there is a sharper, a more precise and concrete opportunity to listen and to hear.
That's so profound and important, and something that I have thought about a lot in the last couple of years of my career too, because this is an unconventional job. If you're doing this work as a job, you can't treat it the way that you would if you worked for an advertising firm, right? And we so often miss the pause, because if I'm thinking, okay, I want to make a difference. Okay, I want to do well. I want to get paid. I want to, create change in my community. Pausing and resting based on what I've been taught growing up means that I'm being lazy and I don't care. And so we create all of these barriers that stop us from doing the transformational work that you said. And it's one thing to acknowledge that internally, but we also need to see that, like you said, created space and validated by our workplaces, that it's to say and create time for, like, in the midst of all of the grant deadlines and all of the projects and all of the important work, to say pausing is also part of your job. And it doesn't mean that you don't care.
Yes, absolutely. Pausing. I love that, Janae. Pausing is part of your job. It's part of your job. It is an expectation, because we know when we don't pause, which equates to rest. When we don't rest, what do we get from that when we aren't rested? We aren't resting. We're anxious. White supremacy culture, a sense of urgency, things that got to be done right now. You mentioned it. You said it. You named it, Janae, the reports. All of the reports that are due, all of the things we have to read, all of the things. So we're constantly going. And so then here comes this sense of urgency. And where there's a sense of urgency, lots of harm is caused. Unintended. There are lots of unintended consequences when we find ourselves on that rat race, not to mention our own wellness. And what messages is it sending to our work environments, our workplaces? Do we have the time? Well, no, let me back up. Do we truly take the time? We have it.
Yeah.
We have it. Right? It's how, is it prioritized? Is it projects over people? Or is it people over projects? And there are times in this work, what we're talking about, like you said, we're not talking about, the businesses and the places and where you go and get food. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a place where people turn to, reach out to, and say, I need support. I'm in danger. Lethality indicators. There's no safe place, and how the courts are responding, and how law enforcement is responding, and how the healthcare system responded, and how CPS and the Child Protective Services responds, and how all these places responds to us. How can we be prepared and fully engaged and ready to engage if we have not rested?
100%. And, in addition to that, I want to validate, gosh, I remember my days as an advocate, that was hard, and you walk into situations, the amount of emotional capacity that you have to show up, to hold space, to advocate for people, it's incredible work. It's also such hard work. And now I think about, and I'm not sure if this is something that you can relate to at NRCDV, working in a national technical assistance space and working with providers and in myself, what I find is we are talking about no survivor justice without racial justice. Our field has inflicted harm for a long, long time, especially white people in our field. And to show up in this work right now means that we have to be accountable. We have to have open conversations. We have to have hard conversations. And when I think about the times that I have been overwhelmed at work, stressed, tired, really worried about meeting my grant deadlines, I have less time and less space to show up. So if I'm in a peer space and someone calls me out and calls me in and challenges me to come forward, when I'm not rested, I don't respond to that in a transformative way. When I'm rested, I can do internal work and we can better our programs.
Yes, absolutely. Woo, you go ahead. That's it right there. You must be rested, even when it comes to and as you spoke about accountability, that calls for a rest, a pause. When one has learned, and we all are capable of causing harm, but when one learns and finds that harm has been caused, and we know that it's unintended, we know that. And so the thing to do is to invite the individual, invite our colleagues, invite our friends, invite those who's in this movement work with us, invite them into a place of a pause, which is what we mean when we say sit with it, right? Sit with it, sit in it and do some self-reflecting as you rest. There are things that can be done as we rest, right? But constantly responding to the demand of turning things in and filling things out and applying for things over here and making sure this is in and making sure, and then knowing that within yourself, you're just really overwhelmed, burned out, and maybe even a little frustration too. The fact of feeling, I can't stop. I can't shut down. I can't drop this, right? And feeling the expectations that no one else can do this. I'm the in and I'm the all. No one else is going to understand this work. No one else is. I'm afraid to ask for help. I don't want to ask for help because it can appear as if I'm weak or as if I'm inadequate or if I don't know what I'm doing. I got to prove that I'm capable of doing this job, even if it means I cause someone harm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're so concerned about proving that you're capable. Any kind of challenge or accountability is a threat to that.
Yeah, for sure.
I love
it. It is a threat. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for saying that and for the intentionality. You know, it's a conversation that I'm hearing more and more in the field, but it kind of comes and goes, and I've yet to see some real consistency with it. So I just really appreciate that. If you like what you hear, check out other Valor Media podcasts about advancing equity and ending sexual violence. Valor Conversations, a podcast about the collective power toward building a safer and more inclusive future for us all. And Leadership Moves, a podcast sharing stories of leaders of color who carry the legacies of those who built the movement to end gender-based violence. You can find both at valor.us or wherever you listen to podcasts. You know, as much as I love, and I really love this overarching intentionality and pause and thinking and sitting with things, and that's so incredibly vital. I also love some practical tools. I don't know, maybe it's the Virgo in me. I do love some practical tools. I like to go back and forth of like, we're pausing, we're meditating, we're moving forward, we're sitting with ourselves, and then being like, okay, here's a toolkit. This is very good for my brain. And I know that you have some really great practical resources to bring people along in the work. So I'd love to talk about some of your prevention tools of the week that people can find for free on your website.
Well, you know what? We do have some really, really cool tools, as you said, and they are so exciting. And, you know, I got a chance to take a look at some of this, right, and some of the tools. And I'm going to share about 3 of them, and just like in quick highlights, and that folks can go on the website and find them. And they were so refreshing, like the garden. Oh my goodness, the gardens for growing healthy communities. It was just a refreshing, a short read, and to take a look at it, the images and stuff. And what that is about, it is a recently formed collaborative, which studies how community gardens, in low to moderate income neighborhoods, and this is specifically in Denver, shout out to Denver, are impacted, right? How it impacts community health. And then the project works to foster community well-being in an inner city neighborhood by turning vacant lots into community gardens. I know that happens a lot in a lot of neighborhoods. If you are on and it happens in your neighborhood and you know about community gardens happening in your neighborhood, just share with us in the chat. This is something, a practice, a model that is happening all over our nation. It's engaging the community in new and profound ways, and it's engaging our the younger generation as well. But they get excited about seeing seeds go in the ground, and look what comes up, and it's harvest time. So that's an exciting work that we have on our website. Another one that we have, oh my goodness, I love all of them, Janae. They are powerful. The one, Powerful Voices. I saw a video of the voices of girls who are participating in the project. And so Powerful Voices create these brave spaces with girls and gender expansive youth of color to take charge of their own power. And I heard some of the participants in that group were saying they love the fact when they come together and connect with others, the power of connectivity, and one of them in particular said, I love building sisterhood. And kind of what this feels like right now to me. It just kind of feels like this virtual sisterhood that is happening while we are having this conversation. And I just love, because I feel the energy. Yeah. I can feel the energy out there. You all, that energy that you have, you're sending it this way. Continue to send it this way, because I tell you, it's reaching. It's reaching, because I can feel it.
Well, the power of community, and I know we still have more to talk about, but like so many people, when I say, you know, oh, I work in violence prevention, they're like, oh, okay, so you do like bystander intervention, or, you know, you work in the courts, you work with police. And I'm like, no, you know, we think about what in our cultures creates space for people to harm each other and how we can close that gap. Like, what do we need to really feel empowered and supported to move through the world? And that piece on community, I mean, what you said, sisterhood, and, you know, whether it's a garden or, you know, a space for youth to share their voices. Some of the most powerful prevention work is not even called prevention work. And that means we have some work to do as preventionists to expand what we do and what we value.
Yes, I love that. I love that some of the most important work that we do isn't even called prevention work, and we're doing prevention work, but it isn't called, right? You know, and I think about, oh my goodness, this is powerful, and just really have me charged up a lot. You know, in addition to that, it's like even another piece that we highlight is the pay equity and a thriving wage. What? Do you know what that is? Who that is speaking to, and what the kind of work like that is doing? And it's being done. And when you go on the website, you'll see this infographic that is absolutely amazing. And the shared vision of it is that all families deserve living conditions in which they can thrive. That's a key word, thrive. This DVAM and beyond, I want you to think about and remember and to marinate on, what does it mean to thrive? Who is thriving? Who isn't thriving? Who can we bring into community and engagement that they can have an opportunity to thrive as everyone else?
Mm-hmm. It's not just thriving, it's thriving.
It's thriving, not just striving. So many of us strive. I'm striving to do better. I'm striving to meet the goals. I'm striving to do the inner work. I'm striving to sit. Let's go from striving to thriving.
That's so powerful. And I mean, that in and of itself challenges so much that holds us back in social justice movements in general, from this constant feeling of we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough time. Like, we are just trying to trudge through the mud, and to pause and say, what would it take for us to thrive? What would it take for our communities to thrive? I so appreciate that. Yes. And for people who are listening to this now, or who are listening to our podcast that will come out about this next week, you can find all of those resources that Jacqueline mentioned at dvawareness.org. We also have a blog post at PreventConnect.org that links directly to those resources. I think it's our second most recent blog post.
You know, there's one thing I thought of too, as we were talking about like community and stuff, is the beloved community. Mm-hmm. A lot of people feel and believe that they live in a beloved community. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work that's happening, you know, to build and create beloved communities. But one thing we know, domestic violence does take place and happens within, you know, communities. Mm-hmm. In the beloved community, it is the community that who responds to domestic violence and are the ones to create the solutions. Yeah. It's not outsiders. It's not systems. The community itself has the wisdom, the knowledge, the skills, the capacity. Mm-hmm. Yet it has. And one thing I love so much is that how we can tell if we really have a beloved community. The way we can tell, the way we can measure that is if we still have hunger, poverty, violence, and all those things that oppress and marginalize marginalized. It's families, it's people, it's residents. It's not a beloved community, because in a beloved community, those things do not exist.
Yeah.
Because it's not tolerated.
And I think, that notion right there, when you describe a beloved community, it makes sense to me why we don't spend a lot of time imagining that. Because when I hear that, it sounds beautiful. It also sounds unattainable. It sounds really intimidating. I'm like, the first thing I think is like, where do I even start? I have no idea where to start here, so I can't do it, but if we keep trapping ourselves in that mindset, we're never going to make progress. It really requires a lot of imagination.
PreventConnect is taking this conversation even further on our social media, and we want you to be a part of the discussion. Join in on the conversation on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we're posting excerpts from this podcast and so many more, and asking experts, practitioners, and followers like you to share your stories and ideas. Search PreventConnect on your social media platforms to get involved.
Speaking of beloved community, I am really curious how you see people taking Heal, Hold, and Center past October and into the rest of the year. What does that mean to you?
So taking this topic past October, I'm going to give you 3 prompts that can be used, because we know communities are coming together. We know that's happening. And so there is opportunities to embed these questions in these conversations. Maybe at your organization, you're not talking about racial justice. You're not talking about racial equity. You just want to help survivors. I don't want to do the racial stuff. Wait, we can have no survivor justice without racial justice. So here are some questions that can be utilized as some prompts and conversation starters. Now, heads up, it's challenging. It's going to be difficult, but these are courageous. We can have courageous conversations. Question number 1, in what ways does your organization or your community put into action that there can't be survivor justice without racial justice? I'll give the question again. In what ways does your community or does your organization, put into action that there can't be survivor justice without racial justice? And then a second question is how does the community embody racial justice, racial equity work? What does that look like? How does your staff embody the work? How are you embodying the work? How are we embodying this work in neighborhoods and communities that we know is the most marginalized people are there? How are we embodying this work? And then another question: what are some of the barriers that your organizations and community encounters or has encountered when trying to start this? There are lots of organizations that have tried to start doing the work, and barriers came along the way. People weren't ready for it. People got really uncomfortable and left the process, abandoned the process. So what are some barriers? We must identify our barriers. We must be able to project our barriers. And some of them, we know what they are. We know what the barriers are. So are we willing to challenge ourselves to move past of what we already know? And the way we really, really know, and I know you all know this, the way we really, really know how effective our work is, if we're really, taking the right approach and have the right perspective, paving the right paths, is if we listen to those who are the most marginalized, those who are not likely to have access and not likely to have resources.
Oof, Jacqueline, thank you so much for sharing that. Those are such powerful questions. And, I want to make sure that people don't miss those. So if you didn't write them all down, which I hope that you did, but if you didn't, we will post those questions later on, maybe invite some people to answer those on our social media and in our podcast, and really encourage you to take those questions back to your community, whether that's a book club or your friends or your organizations. And I did see, Jacqueline, a question came in through the chat. So maybe we can ask that before we go into or answer that before we go into our last question. So I see, what have both of you found are the biggest misconceptions in regards to organizations trying to raise awareness and make moves within the sexual violence prevention space? I have my answer because I feel very strongly about it, but I want to give you a chance first. Shall I go first, or would you like to?
I've done a lot of talking. How about you go ahead? You can answer that, but I have an answer as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. The interviewer becomes an interviewee. Exciting. I think this is something that I thought about a lot with the Me Too movement and how we often talk about violence and interpersonal violence. And, I also want to say, I think the Me Too movement was amazing in getting these conversations into the general public. But what I often find is that people think that gender and power-based violence exists because bad people cause harm. And if you remove the bad person, then the harm stops. And we often talk about sexual and domestic violence as a tree, right? And so we're in this space where we're plucking the leaves off the tree, thinking the tree is going to go away. The leaves are going to keep growing back. For every Harvey Weinstein who is incarcerated, another 3 are going to pop up in his place because we haven't addressed why he was the way that he was, why these things are happening. And that forces us to think outside of the binary too, where men cause harm, women experience harm. And we had this idea of what a survivor looks like. Usually a woman, usually white, usually married. We had this idea of the perfect survivor trope that really it doesn't exist. And so we spend all of our time talking about how do we arrest more people? How do we bolster the criminal justice system? How do we get the people off of our streets? And not only is that not solving the problem, in a lot of ways, it's exacerbating the problem because those systems are used to harm poor Black and brown people. We're in a space today where we have just as much violence as we did when the Me Too movement happened. I'll get off my soapbox. I'd love to hear what you think, Jack.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, wow. Well, my little piece that I'm going to add to that, you did that. I can listen more. Oh, my goodness. Ooh, I was just really listening and enjoying it, taking it in. Yes. So my piece I would like to contribute is what came up for me from the question is the misconceptions is that that we aren't going to make mistakes when doing this work, particularly racial equity and racial justice. We will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. It's not about giving the right answer. A lot of people are afraid to engage because they are afraid that they're not going to have the right answer, or they're not going to sound as eloquent, or that's not going to make sense. When you do it and reflect and put it in your own words, it's one thing to learn the definitions. It's one thing to learn the framework, to learn the theory, to learn all of the things. But it's a whole other thing when you have an understanding from your own mind, from your own words. Not just learning the definition verbatim, but when I hear this, what comes up for me? What am I hearing from this? I love healing circles, and I sit in a lot of healing circles. And what I love so much about it, each person gets to share what has come up for them. And it's not a place of judging or that it's wrong, because now we'll be getting into performative behavior. We don't want or need performance. We really want authentic, transparent, and folks that can allow themselves to be vulnerable.
Oh my gosh. Say it again. Say it everywhere. Sometimes, well, I love the social justice space, and we can be really judgy and we can be really performative. And there's like so much of a focus, especially on those of us who are white, of like, how do I look good all the time? And what would, I can't make mistakes. I made a mistake earlier this week in our Instagram live before. Like, I am a person. I have my own assumptions and biases, and that stuff comes out sometimes. And if we're not bold with each other, what are we doing here?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the naming it. That's the naming it part, Janae. That's the naming it, right? That is the naming it. That's what part of one of the components of racial equity is naming it. And yeah, it's a challenge to name it because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want folks to see, I really don't know what you think I know. I don't know. I got to be sharp and I got to stay like I'm on top of it. I'm an expert. But that's not what this work is. That's not the invitation here. That's not the invitation. Because we have years of years and years and years of this movement, right? Well, we have been so perfect. Oh my goodness. All of the books and the ways and the words and the trainings. Oh, we're loaded with that stuff. We're loaded. But now we are in a time and an age where that's not going to work this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working.
Yep. If we were so perfect, I don't think we would be having this conversation today. We would be like, oh my gosh, good for us. We really ended domestic violence, didn't we? That was awesome.
Exactly. Like, oh my gosh, the numbers are going down. There's no homicide, DV homicides. Oh my gosh, the hotline is about to lay some folks off because those calls just ain't coming in like they used to.
Yeah. That's not happening. That's not happening in my state, in my community. Is it happening in yours?
No. In fact, it's increasing. It's going up and it's becoming more lethal. A lot of cases are becoming lethal. Yep. So we have not arrived, and it's not about, again, to overemphasize, it's not about performative behavior. One thing I wrote down earlier this week is that, like, when it comes to like centering survivors, then that means the centering means we aren't hovering over, we aren't overstanding, we aren't overbearing. We have taken some steps back,
Mm-hmm.
and if we're doing anything, what we're doing is we're showing up as accomplices, co-conspirators. We're showing up as allies. That's what happens when you begin to center. Those who have been the center for such a long time begin to back up and take on those positions of becoming disruptors. Where are the disruptors?
Yeah, we got to get back in the streets with the pots and pans, even if those streets are our Zoom spaces or our staff meetings.
Yes, I have a colleague that says, I love it. She says, meet me in these here streets. Meet me in
our peer learning circle. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much. So I have my last question for you, and you've spoken a little bit to how we get there, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the problem and what we do about the problem. And I'd love to do some imagining. So we were just joking about what it would be like if we actually did work ourselves out of a job the way that we say that we want to. And I invite people in the audience to answer this question as well. Jacqueline, let's do some imagining. What do you imagine a world free of violence would look like? And how do we get there?
Oh, I love this question so much. I imagine a world free of dehumanization and marginalization and oppression and capitalism. I imagine a world where true and deep sense of authentic joy, where everyone has what they need to thrive, and where there's a consistent and non-ending rate of folks going at their own pace. I have 36 years worth of dreaming this. Dreaming, 36 years of dreaming what this world and movement would look like, and I would definitely, oh my goodness, Janae, I had to bring and think of the sisters too. I would definitely include the number of years that my sisters in the movement been imagining and dreaming, all of that put together. We would no longer have to dream and imagine about it. If that's the imagining and the dreaming, is that we no longer have to imagine and to dream of what a violence-free world would look like. Because it would be a real-time manifestation that we could truly tell our children. I could tell my grandchildren about my dreams that came to pass, my dreams that came true. If everyone was humanized, that would dismantle oppression, marginalization, gentrification. Oh, it would dismantle capitalism. It would dismantle patriarchy. Oh, all of those things would not exist.
Wow. My friend, you said it. You really said it. And that shows 36 years of dreaming.
You know, I want to give I was talking with someone as well, several survivors that I've talked with over the years. Like the way the systems currently look now, we say to, a Black woman, okay, you can't wear those locks to court because you're going to be perceived like this. Okay. You need to pull your hair back, and you need to make sure you don't dress like that. And when you stand, don't cry, because it'll make you look like you have you got some stuff going on. You have some mental challenges. You're not in your right mind. So we got to get you ready. We got to get you ready. All of this fixing, it really robs us of joy, and it robs us of rest. Bringing it back full circle.
Wow, Jacqueline. I mean, this conversation with you I felt a lot of joy, and I felt a lot of rest in this conversation. Thank you so much for diving into this with me, for bringing your full self to this with me. I'm so appreciative of you.
Well, thank you so very much. And just know, what I shared is my perspective, and there are many others out there. What is yours? What do you imagine? What are you dreaming about? What is yours? How would you like to see a world free of violence?
I know Jacqueline posed some amazing questions for us. Again, I will post those on our social media later. And remember, nrcdv.org, dvawareness.org, PreventConnect.org. They'll all point you to where these resources are. And if you want a little snapshot, we put out an Instagram reel just a couple of days ago, kind of talking about some of those tools. So thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Well, thank you so very much, Janae, for having me. And I'm just so honored. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Hey, I look forward to let's come back and do something else again.
PreventConnect is brought to you by Valor US and the Centers for Disease Control. You can find more information about this episode, along with past episodes, web conferences, and blog articles at PreventConnect.org. As we work to bring you more podcasts like this one, we need your help ensuring that this podcast and others like it reaches listeners like you. Take a second to rate this podcast wherever you're listening to it. That helps us show up on main podcasting pages and reach new listeners. And of course, if you have an idea for a topic that you'd like to see us cover, reach out to us and comment on this post on our Instagram page.